everyone. Thanks for joining us for this edition of the 2014 Campaign Roundtable series. I'm politics reporter Robert-rizzuto, and we are here with the two Democratic candidates seeking to be the next Attorney General of the Commonwealth. Again, thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks a lot.
We are going to kick our next set of questions over to our panel of journalists. And the first one is going to come from New England Public Radio's Jill Kaufman. Jill?
Thank you, Rob. And thank you for being here today. I want to ask you about the politics of our politics on Beacon Hill. Do you think the state probation department's scandal is indicative of patronage matters issues in other state agencies? And if so, what do you think the state attorney general's office can do about this?
Okay, so we're on the topic of patronage and the probation department scandal. Jobs appear to be being leveraged for political power. I guess so in your view, is this just a symptom of a larger problem, or is it an isolated case? And either way, what is the Attorney General's role in this going forward? And for this one, Warren, we can start with you first.
Sure. Well, I think first off, the Attorney General sets a standard, and I will set a standard to have all of my hiring done on based on merit, with merit-based panelists, so that I want an Attorney General's office that brings the best and the brightest, similar to what I think Francis X. Bellotti did when he was Attorney General, Scott Harshbarger did it. By the way, I'm very proud to have been endorsed by all 4 living former Democratic Attorneys Generals because of my commitment to this highest ideal. This office is the people's law firm and really can stand up and advocate on behalf of people who don't have a voice. And if you get anything less than the best people in those offices, then shame on the next Attorney General. So that is my commitment to the highest ideals. But secondly, I served 8 years on Beacon Hill, 4 years in the House and 4 years in the Senate. I had left probably right around the time that the Probation Commissioner O'Brien was coming in office. Never actually met him. But obviously I read what we all read about what transpired there. And this was not, letter writing, advocating. This was, wholesale, far beyond the pale, anything that I had ever seen on Beacon Hill. Whether it's the rule rather than the exception, I don't know. Does some of it go on up there? Perhaps too much, unquestionably. And so first off, I'm going to set a standard. Secondly, I'm going to let people know that the Attorney General's office is not going to abide by any misdeeds or public corruption. And when we hire someone in the criminal justice system that is not up to their game and is not suitable for a position, that has a negative impact on our ability to have the criminal justice system function. So, I have a record here. I've been reformed. The Globe once referred to me as Mr. Payne and the you-know-what on ethics. I sued a sitting House Speaker. I am probably the only Democratic state senator to have never voted for Billy Bulger when I served in the state Senate. I passed smoking in the State House over the objections of a chain-smoking Senate president. There has been few, if any, more independent, more reform-minded legislators in the past several years up on Beacon Hill. So I'm proud of my record, and they know up on Beacon Hill and otherwise that I'm going to be very aggressive on public corruption issues and this type of patronage.
Gotcha. Warren, thank you very much. Maura, your take on the probation the probation scandal. Is this indicative of a bigger problem? What's the AG's role in this?
Well, look, the AG has a huge role to play when it comes to public corruption and ensuring that there's not fraud on the system and that people who do things in government that aren't right, that aren't ethical, that are against the law are held accountable. That's the job of the Attorney General. That is what it means to be the people's lawyer. And as Attorney General, you're the people's lawyer, not the people's lobbyist. You were there running the public law firm. You're not just another Beacon Hill politician. So absolutely, it is critical that the Attorney General be there to investigate and prosecute cases of political corruption. And frankly, I bring that experience and background in the sense that it's true. I've never worked on Beacon Hill. I don't come out of elective office. But I instead come out of the Attorney General's office where I was fighting for people day in and day out, whether it was taking on the federal government or taking on big banks or standing up to protect kids in school from bullying. This has been my work, and I think it's incredibly important as Attorney General that you are there for the people and not Beacon Hill special interests. And we saw with this case, as we've seen with some other cases and scandals, really troubling behavior and conduct. And it is critically important. I think about the teams that I played on as an athlete. I think about the divisions that I've led and the bureaus that I've led and the people that we brought into that office and in the Attorney General's office. You better believe it. We want the best and the brightest and people who are there by merit. And what was so troubling in this probation case is that we had a lot of people, it seems, who weren't there by merit, but were there because they were somebody's cousin or relative. And the people deserve better than that. And certainly with me as Attorney General, they're going to get somebody who's going to work to ensure that.
If I could just jump in, one thing that we need to do is to enhance the tools. I think Maura would agree with this on the public corruption perspective that the Attorney General has at his or her disposal to go after matters of public corruption. Remember, in the probation scandal, the only tools the only convictions for O'Brien and crew were on racketeering and mail fraud, neither of which are available to the Attorney General of Massachusetts. So I think that enhancing the next Attorney General's tools in this public corruption arena would be very, very helpful, and that's something I will advocate for as the next Attorney General.
Taking a look at the law and seeing ways that you could make this more of a state issue than having to kick things up to the federal level.
Yeah, and I think that, and certainly I appreciate all that Warren did in the legislature in the 90s on ethics reform. Obviously there was more work to do, which is why in 2009 the state worked to pass a new ethics reform law, right? And we see that there's been need to take stronger action on this front. And I'd agree, whatever we can do in terms of enhancing the tools of the Attorney General's office, I'll support, because again, routing out corruption, routing out fraud in the system, that's a key prerogative of the Attorney General. That's what it means to be the people's lawyer. And I say that from experience, having been on the front lines fighting for people here in the state, not special interests. Again, the job of AG is to be the people's lawyer, not another Beacon Hill politician.
Well, thank you both for that. We appreciate your articulate thoughts on the topic. Our next question, we are going to kick it back over to our panel. The next one comes from the Republicans' Ron Chamelis. Ron?
Hey, thanks, Rob. Gun control, gun regulation, obviously a contentious issue, and you have both supported the most recent gun legislation, but you differ somewhat on what should come next and what can be done in the future about additional gun controls. The question here is whether the Attorney General's office has the capacity to take on an issue like this, possibly unilaterally, and still maintain a sharp enough focus on all the other issues that you're going to have to deal with.
Okay, so yeah, the issue of gun control has obviously been a big one, especially in the past couple of years. Here in Mass, we had that comprehensive piece of gun control legislation that passed. You both have came out in support of that, but taking different views on where you might go as Attorney General. Can the Attorney General's office take on such a major issue and still keep an eye on the ball in regards to all the other issues you have to watch? And Maura, we can start with you on this.
Absolutely. And look, I look at gun violence as a civil rights issue, as a public health crisis, really. And we see it day after day when another child is killed somewhere, somebody shoots somebody dead in the streets in a neighborhood on a quiet Saturday morning. We know it's a problem, and you better believe it as Attorney General, that is a top priority. In terms of what the Attorney General can do, I've set out what the Attorney General can do based on my experience as a lawyer and in that office. And, it involves a few things. First of all, we need to implement the new gun reform legislation. It's a great bill. It's the most rigorous bill in the country, actually, in terms of the reforms. It gets at root causes of violence, combating gun trafficking, getting police the resources they need to trace guns and to solve crime, getting us signed up for the criminal background database. All of that's there. But I think we need to do more. And so I want to invest in early childhood anti-violence programs. I want to invest in programming that gets kids doing constructive things in the afternoon after school. I spent time here in Springfield with a group. I led a conversation a few weeks ago with citizens here in Springfield who were concerned about gun violence. And we talked about all these issues, and we talked about the ways in which we can together get at this issue. I support smart gun technology, as I know Warren does, but I don't think of it as a single idea. I think that we need to do that plus a whole lot more. Comprehensive planning, comprehensive policy is what it's going to take to end gun violence, and nobody's going to be more committed to that. I'm a civil rights lawyer, I've been a prosecutor, and I know how to work with and have worked with police and district attorneys, as well as community groups. And this is, as I say, a civil rights issue, a public health crisis. I was learning a couple weeks ago about Dunbar, the community center, and which is partial to my heart as a kid who grew up playing basketball. And we can't have institutions like Dunbar close. Programs like the Y that give kids opportunities and constructive ways to spend time. And we need to make sure that those community settings are available for kids, because that's a piece, not everything, but that's a piece to reducing gun violence. So it is absolutely something that I'll stand tall on and stand up to the NRA and anybody else on, but it takes a much more comprehensive approach to reduce gun violence.
And the AG's office has the bandwidth, if you will, to take this on and still
Absolutely.
maintain,
I'll tell you this
else.
about the AG's office. 18 months ago, shortly after Sandy Hook, I was on a call with the Attorney General, with Vice President Biden's office, and with other state attorneys generals, looking at what we could do on the issue of gun violence. And over the next several months, I know the Attorney General's office worked on studying and making recommendations that made their way into this new gun law, which is terrific. I worked with Jack McDevitt, who was the leading Northeastern criminologist who advised the legislature on this gun bill, and he and Colonel Marion McGovern, a former colonel of the state police, both endorse and support me, and wrote this weekend an op-ed about why my gun violence plan is the real deal, and why that is the plan that will get us to where we need to be on ending gun violence.
Gotcha. Maura, thank you very much. Looking at implementing the new law and for ways you can expand this
and a little more. Sure.
All right. Warren, does the Attorney General's office have the bandwidth to take all this on?
Sure, it's not that much bandwidth, but let me just respond first to some of the points that Maura points to, and rightfully so. The issue of early childhood education. I mean, I wrote the bill with the Invest in Children's license plate. I've met with Janice Santos, who runs the Great Head Start program, has been running it for many years here. Met with Tom Ash, my friend and city councilor from Springfield and supporter over at the Y, and talked about their programs. All of those things are very, very important. We need to do them, we need to encourage them, but that's not directly in the purview of the Attorney General's office. And the reason that's important is when we go to legislative fronts, we know the power, we know the influence of the NRA and their local affiliate, the Gun Owner Action League in Massachusetts. Certainly we saw the House version get dramatically watered down when it went to the Senate. So we saw the power of that industry obviously we see it on Capitol Hill all the time. So I don't believe, frankly, that it's a lot of bandwidth, but frankly, I see this Route 91 corridor with folks from Vermont coming down and trading drugs for guns on a regular basis. And I know that there is no single cure to this problem, but I know one thing, Rob, that the Attorney Generals of Massachusetts can do unilaterally. It's utilizing the gun regs, which the Attorney General's office was specifically authorized to do so in the assault weapons ban, of which I was a co-sponsor of in 1998. And since that period, the gun regulations have been upheld by the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts. So clearly the Attorney General can do it. And this is one thing, Rob, that the Attorney General of Massachusetts can do unilaterally, and that is require smart gun technology on all new guns sold in the Commonwealth. Specifically, Smith & Wesson, our neighbor here in Springfield, developed this technology in 2000 and wanted to sell it. But the NRA and the other gun manufacturers organized a boycott of Smith & Wesson products and said, if you sell this, we're going to force you out of business. Their stock started to tank, and they've shelved the technology, and it hasn't been available since 2000. You can buy it in Europe, but you can't buy it in the United States. And every hour of every day, somewhere in America, a young child is injured as a result of a gun accident in the home. And you know what? We can do something. The Attorney General can require this technology. This is the technology where if you grab a gun handle, there's a chip in there, it recognizes your fingerprint. Your gun, your fingerprint, you can pull it. You can have 5 people on it, you can have just yourself. Another guy developed the technology, the developer of the Uzi. This is not anti-gun. This is about seat belts for guns. It's about making this inherently dangerous product a little bit safer. The Attorney General of Massachusetts doesn't need to ask the legislature, doesn't need to ask the governor. He or she can do it. I will do it. We both support smart gun technology, but only one of us will do it. And I'm proud to say I'm going to take on the NRA. I'm going to stand up and try to make our neighborhood safer, make our community safer. I took on big tobacco. I beat them. I'm ready to take on the NRA and beat them.
Can I just a brief response?
Yes, briefly, Maura.
I disagree, Warren, with Warren's comment about the AG not having the bandwidth or the power. I mean, I'm sure he's read the bill, but the AG has a whole lot of power and responsibility when it comes to implementing this new law, which, by the way, will deal with existing illegal guns on our street right now.
That's not what I said. I was talking about early childhood education and the like, that there are things that the Attorney General can advocate for, but there's no magic wand that the Attorney General has on that issue. So,
well, I guess on that I disagree. For example, when I was involved in suits in the office, we'd get settlement funds and we'd fund programming, including programming for early childhood efforts. So I think there are ways to get at that. But my broader point is this. Look, with this new law, you need an Attorney General who understands how to deploy troopers and investigators and assistant attorneys generals to deal with gun trafficking and to work with local police and district attorneys, and by the way, neighboring states, to combat what's going on and what we see on the I-91 corridor.
My
you
commitment,
need an Attorney General who understands how to work with police and support them on the suitability, how to support the private sale background checks and implement the new system for doing that. You know, these are all things that our next Attorney General is going to be involved with, which, by the way, will deal with existing guns right now. Let's not forget, a lot of the killing and what we see going on out in our streets right now, we got to deal with guns on our streets, in our neighborhoods, in our homes right now. Certainly we need to implement and incorporate smart gun technology for guns that are made in the future, but I'm really focused on more than that, and that is dealing with the present crisis.
You both said that you're looking at taking a comprehensive approach to this. You both said it's important to maintain and implement what we've just passed as this sweeping piece of legislation, and you're both looking at how to take it to the next level.
Except that I'm the only one that will force the implementation of smart gun technology on new guns sold, which will also, in addition to cutting down on accidental gun deaths, it will cut down on gun trafficking, Rob, because remember, if someone breaks into your home, steals your gun with the smart gun technology, they're not going to be able to sell that. That gun won't work for anybody else, which is why, frankly, I was proud to have been endorsed by, I think, one of the great criminal justice leaders, not just in Hampden County, but in the United States, Sheriff Mike Ash, just last week. It is my commitment to this issue and to standing up and taking on this powerful interest that led Sheriff Mike Ash to support me.
Gotcha.
Well, and
thank you both for that.
Appreciate that.
We're going to have to run to commercial break here.
But you know, I just, to be clear, I have the support of District Attorney Dave Sullivan and Sheriff Stalin and Sheriff Garvey, in part because of my stance on gun violence.
Gotcha. Well, I know that you've both taken this up as an issue that's very near and dear to you, have very passionate stances on it, which I'm sure the folks that are in favor of more gun controls sincerely appreciate. But thank you both for taking the time.
Thanks.
We're going to take a short break here, and we'll be back in a few moments with more from the candidates.